flying was we were off Midway, and one of their patrol bombers or patrol planes was out doing the same thing we were from a different base, and as I recall, he was off a half a mile or so from us, and if I recall it correctly, we were both flying in the same direction for a while, and also, again, as I recall, I use that term a lot, I know, that the our orders were to observe and report. I mean, you don't necessarily go out and attack a plane like that, because the theory being that your services are more required to find out about the enemy and report it so somebody else could take care of it if it's deemed necessary. So as I see it, that's what that other Japanese plane was doing too. His orders were exactly the same as ours, so there was no contact. There were no shots fired between us. You didn't go over and, quote, pick a fight, let's say it that way. Yeah.
Right.
So that was the, and then at Guadalcanal, that is down there through, December, January, February, 42, and that because there were a good number of us, and radiomen were one of the rates that seemed to rate kind of high in the school assignments, that I had applied to get into flight training. And while I was down there, my orders came through that I was ordered back to a flight training for pre-flight at Athens, Georgia, and then went on to other flight schools and stuff. So it was, as I recall, in March of 1942, they put me on a ship from down there and sent me back to San Francisco.
March of 42?
42, yeah.
Okay. So that was
excuse me,
okay.
43.
Yeah, I was gonna,
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you, 3. Yeah, it's 42 in November, 42 in December, down to Guadalcanal, then 43 then. So I went back there, and of course then I saw my girlfriend in San Francisco, and we went through there. I was able to go back up to my home at Barnum, visit my parents for a little bit, and then went down to Athens, Georgia, at the University of Georgia. Had been taken over for flight training, pre-flight school. I went through that thing for, I think it was 12, 15 weeks, something like that. And that was basically classwork and exercise. And that's where we got into the 10-mile runs and all this sort of stuff that like now the SEALs do and stuff, but ours wasn't as rigid as the SEALs was, but it was rigid enough for me, I tell you, because I'm not that much of an athlete. But so we did that at Georgia. I got assigned to flight training, and that would be one of the N2Ss that you saw in the other room there. Well, they said it was NAS Dallas. It was a little town near Dallas, Arlington, Texas. They had a little dirt field down there, and we went through basic training there. The only real experience that I can recall of basic training, everything went, I'll say, pretty much routine. But the thing that I can remember is when you were first introduced to fly at night, that it's dark. There were no runway lights. We had smudge pots. That's what we landed between. And as I recall, the instructor, you'd pass most of your daylight stuff. You theoretically know how to take it off and land it during the daytime, but at night things look a little different up there. And it was dark. And as I recall, we started before it got completely dark, and he said, "Okay, you take it." And he got out of the airplane, and now I go up alone at night. And it was black. I had some hair-raising moments for me that I can remember. At one time, I was doing something and probably just trying to come back into land. But the stars on the ground all seemed together, and I didn't know if it was stars or lights I was looking at. And it was very confusing, let me say it that way. But then again, like we were taught that just get your act together and think what you're supposed to be doing and remember what you were told. And it all worked out. I've never had any accidents or anything like that, but it was some hairy moments, let's say it that way.
This wasn't all, it couldn't have been all visual then. I mean, you had to have Was it all visual?
All visual, yeah.
Really? Oh, so you,
Oh, yeah.
you couldn't go by instruments yet.
What's that?
You couldn't like just read the instruments yet.
Well, we had instruments, but in an N2S, all you've basically got is an airspeed.
It's basic. They're really basic.
Needle ball and airspeed, they called it. It's, you don't have any artificial horizons or anything like that. It's,
Oh boy, oh boy.
And when you're banking at night, if there are lights on the ground, and not too many of them, like from a city, but just a few lights, the stars, and when it's real dark, it all kind of blends together. You gotta really think, is that a star I'm looking at, or is that a light on the ground? And then when you get coming around, when you're in position where you can see the lights properly arranged for landing, well, then it changes. But when you're out, it just...
Disorienting, huh?
Yeah, it was. So that was at Dallas. Went through there. Finished up at Dallas. During that time too, just if we're talking life, little personal stuff, that my wife, she came and visited me. We weren't married at the time, in Dallas for a few days, and that's when we basically decided that we would marry and stuff. But now this is maybe June or July
43.
of 43, and we got married in October 43, yeah. Okay, so then from there I went to what they called advanced training down at Pensacola, where we started flying bigger airplanes and stuff. The first ones, in an N2S, your wheels are always in the same position, very limited as far as equipment on the plane. But down there, first of all, we had a plane that the propeller would change pitch. You could make it go from takeoff in this plane. What the heck was that thing called? Multi-vibrator. Can't think what the Navy designation was. But the wheels were fixed. But the new thing that we had to accommodate was the fact that you could change the propeller pitch for takeoff and cruising. And then we went to an SNJ, a little more advanced, where the wheels would come up and the prop would switch. And as I recall, they had flaps too for landing. It did a little different conditions and stuff. And went through those. And then, and that was the point, as I recall, that we were assigned either to multi-engine squadrons or to fighter squadrons, or training for that. And because of my background and stuff, having been in multi-engine stuff, I was assigned multi-engines. And so we went into what they called then an SNB, but it was a little twin-engine airplane that I think it carried like 4 passengers
So
or so.
you're still in Pensacola?
Yes, at Pensacola.
Okay. And how long is this school lasting?
Again, this would have 2 or 3 months, something like that.
And this is mostly hands-on?
I'm sorry?
It's mostly hands-on flying
Yes,
now?
yeah. Now it's not too much classroom, and a little bit of instrument training, and we used, what the heck did they call them? The link trainers. These are devices, little things for what was used for instrument training at that time. And let's see if there was something else about that training period. Well, and then from there, that after finishing that training in December, Christmas Eve, 1943, and it was Christmas Eve, that's when I got my wings. And then a little bit later, that's when my commission was dated from. But then on December 24th of 1943, that I got my flight certificate, and they made me a chief aviation pilot. I didn't mention this, but at Athens, I went through flight training as an enlisted man. I wore the enlisted uniform. Now, there were other cadets in the class. These were fellows that were selected normally from a couple of years of college that went right into the flight program. They were cadets and destined to become officers. For us, they called us Mustangs and stuff, that the ex-enlisted men who got to be pilots, and that that some of us got commissions and some didn't get commissions, and I did get a commission, so that was where
So you did it the hard way, you worked your way up.
well, whatever. That I was just very, very fortunate in that case, being at the right place at the right time.
The right skill set.
Yeah, and had the necessary skills to do it.
Can I ask you a silly question going back? So you said you got married in October of 43?
43, while I was in flight training.
Okay, so you got married in Florida?
In Florida, my wife came down there all by herself, and we were married at the base at the Navy Chapel in Florida. For best man, there was nobody there, no family, nothing. Yeah. That there was a Marine, happened to be, a Marine officer was in the church that day, and the preacher asked him if he would act as a best man, and he did.
That was the witness too?
Yeah, now this was very, very, yeah, he was our witness. That was very common in those days, where for many of the marriages, either the people just knew each other for a weekend, days, weeks, or short time. I can recall the chaplain asking us when he spoke with us before the ceremony that he said, how long have you known each other? And when I told him that, about a year and a half, 2 years, that he was very, very pleased because he'd been servicing so many that, I met her last weekend, or we met yesterday and I've got to go overseas tomorrow. And right or wrong, I'm not in a position to say, but considering that where you have a couple in love, and by the love I even sometimes wonder about, but where the man is tomorrow going off, and they'd seen the statistics, some never coming back,
right.
And it's what's right and what's wrong, I don't know. Right. That many of the marriages worked out well, a lot of them didn't.
And a lot of them, she ended up a widow, huh?
Yeah, yes, that's right. There were a lot of widows. In fact, when I met my grandmother after we were married and up there, that she said, it's okay to get married during the war, but no kids, she said. No
Not
kids.
right away, at least.
Yeah,
Huh?
no kids. Yeah.
No kids.
That they'd seen what happens to I'll say a young mother, father already dead, got to raise a kid. It's not the kind of thing that is, I'll say conducive to a normal life, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But it did happen. It did happen.
Life, right.
So, well, that was just that kind of a side on it, but it's things that did affect me in later life. We were married for 64 years before she died, so that's okay, where are we now? Okay, training.
Wings,
We're
yeah.
about finishing up training. Then now I've got my wings. I'm commissioned and got my wing, and I was assigned to Lake City, Florida, to a squadron where we're now starting to train in service type of military aircraft, and the bombing squadron that I was assigned was VB something or another, I can't remember, and we were flying Lockheed Lodestars. Now I'm sure that, I doubt that you remember this, but it used to be an airline plane, and it was a twin engine tail dragger and carried, I'm going to say 20, 30 people, and the Navy used them for patrolling and bombing and stuff. And so I was assigned a squadron like that. Then I finished that training, and because that I had been overseas and had, quote, military flying combat experience, whatever that means, that they asked many of us in that situation, and I'm just trying to think if there was anybody else in my class at that time that had that qualified. I don't think so. But anyway, they wanted us to stay on as instructors to tell these guys that are going to be going out to be doing this here shortly what it's going to be like. And so I stayed on as an instructor there for a bit.
Wow.
After finishing with that squadron,